I'm Carolina with Always Expect More, and today I'm going to show you English paper piecing. English paper piecing is an old technique that's gotten a new resurgence, especially with modern quilters. We love it because it's so easy to carry with you on the go. You don't need a sewing machine, you just need your hand needle and thread, and everything fits right in your bag. English paper piecing starts with the fabric. You can use pre-cut 5-inch squares if you like, and cut them down to the size of your papers. If you're at home, you can use a rotary cutter and ruler, but if you're traveling, just place your paper right on your fabric, and you can just eyeball your seam allowance. Some people like a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I prefer a good 3/8 inch seam allowance. That helps when we baste. Just cut your fabric all the way around. It doesn't have to be perfect. With traditional sewing, we use our seam allowance as a guide, but here it's really just to secure the fabric. Use your papers on your fabric, and we're using a glue pen. Traditional English paper piecing, we thread baste, but glue basting is faster, easier, and actually secures your fabric better. Glue one side and press your fabric over onto the paper. Then turn it 180 degrees and press the other side. By basting two opposite sides, we're getting even tension across the fabric. Don't stretch your fabric, don't pull it, just keep it secure. Most of my English paper piecing projects, I don't wash, but this glue absolutely will wash out. Lots of people ask, how long will this glue stay? I've taken papers out the very next day or even the same day, or I've kept this glue in for a year or two, because sometimes it takes me that long to finish my project. Once you have your papers basted, you're ready to sew. Take two pieces, put them right sides together, and line them up. Some people like to start their stitching with a knot. I spend so much of my time getting knots out of my thread, it just offends me to put a knot in. So instead, I start by bringing my thread up, which hides my tail, and then putting 3 stitches just in place right on the edge. These 3 stitches in place will work just like a knot, and they're actually going to secure this seam. Most of the tension that English paper piecing gets is where all the pieces meet. So by doing 3 stitches in place at the beginning and end of every seam, it secures it and keeps those places with the most tension really secure. English paper piecing, we don't ever go through the paper. We just want to hit that fabric, but sometimes when you touch that paper, it's a little stiff. I like using a good thimble to help me get my needle through. You can actually use the papers over and over again because you'll be taking out the papers when you're done with your project. Once you've stitched all the way across, secure your seam with 3 more stitches in place. It's super simple to add your next piece. Just take your next piece, line it up, and stitch just like you did before. Bringing your thread up, hiding your tail. You'll be super glad that you hid your tails when you go to applique this piece on anything. If you don't hide your tails, you'll have little tails hanging out that you have to try to bury. If you hide your tails at the beginning and end every time, you don't have to worry about those when you go to finish your project. 3 stitches in place, and then stitch all the way across. How wide you make your stitches is really up to you. You want them fairly close. I do about 1/8 to a little bit of a generous 1/8 of an inch apart. And just grabbing 2 or 3 threads on each side and moving all the way across. Once you've stitched this piece in place, comes the true magic of English paper piecing. When 3 seams come together like this, we call this an inset seam or a Y seam. These are a little trickier to do on a sewing machine, although absolutely not impossible. But with hand piecing, it's super, super simple to put together your Y seam. It's almost like it's not even there. Just fold and start your seam just like you did every other time with 3 stitches in place. Because I do a lot of English paper piecing, and sometimes I'm working on bigger projects that have a deadline, I find that this part tends to put more stress right on the inside of my hand. So sometimes I'll just fold this paper right in half, and that reduces that stress and that tension on my hand, and I can sew easier. I don't worry at all about folding those papers. The papers are super inexpensive. They come in packs of 100. I can use them easily 4 or 5 times. And if I throw any folded ones away because I just don't want to use those, it's really not a big deal. Once you've sewn all the way across, do 3 stitches at the end to secure it, and keep adding more pieces. You can keep adding more pieces until you get whatever shape you want. For this project, I'm using a flower, or you can keep adding to make an entire pillow, or even an entire quilt. You can use smaller pieces and applique them to make a smaller quilt if you like. Really, English paper piecing can be as big or as small as you like. There's also different shapes that you can use. Although hexagons are the most popular shape, I really like working with diamonds and tumblers as well. The question I get the most often when people see me English paper piecing is, how long do those papers stay in? A paper stays in until either you're done with your project and you can take them all out, or until it's supported on all sides. These have been glue basted in, and it's as easy as just peeling away the fabric and popping your papers out. Keep this paper because you can absolutely reuse it. You can move all the way around your project, taking the papers out. Since this is going to be appliqued down, I want to be a little more careful on my outside edges, making sure that I keep those folds in place as I peel it out. These will just get pressed back in place, and I can either finger press them or press them with an iron to secure. Once you have all your papers out, you press with an iron or finger press really well, and you're ready to applique to your project. You can applique to an existing garment, to an existing piece of fabric, to an existing pillow form, whatever you like. You can use the same glue pen that you used before to just baste everything in place before stitching it down. Glue all the way around, only on your seam allowances. You don't want to put glue on both your seam allowances and your inside fabric, because your seam allowances are a little taller and you'll get more bumps if you glue everywhere. So just add that glue on your seam allowances. Press it in place. If you're at home or at a hotel and you have an iron, you can set that glue a little faster with an iron. And once the glue is set, you can stitch everything down using your same needle and thread. I love to use 100 weight thread when I'm English paper piecing because it's as fine as a hair and it makes your stitches truly invisible. Once everything's basted, secure it into your hoop, and you can be complete with a project right there. Or you can add some stitches. Use a water-soluble pen and write a quote that you can then stitch with embroidery floss. Or if you want to get really creative, you can get out all your fun embroidery stitches. Or you can go to your machine and you can quilt it in place. It's up to you whether you use 2 or 3 strands of embroidery floss. When I'm doing bigger projects, I like to use 3 strands to make it really stand out. And use whatever stitches you like. to stitch. Right here, I'm just doing a straight stitch to go all the way on my lines. What's great about using the water-soluble pen is that after you're done, you can just use a washcloth and some water, and these marks will wash completely away. There are also air-soluble pens, and those are purple, and when you use those, they disappear on their own after a short time. But I have small children, and I never know if I'm going to get to finish a project today or a week from now. So I always like to use the water-soluble pens, so that way my product doesn't disappear while I'm off doing something else. Once you're done with all your stitches, you can take this out of the hoop to turn it into a pillow or to quilt it, or you can tuck all your fabric behind to make it something ready to hang or to give as a gift. And that's how easy it is to do English paper piecing. I can't wait to see what you make.